Veronica is a naturopath, and she first started actually as an agriculture scientist turned naturopath, and she specializes in evidence-based, biophysics-based therapies. So that lines up perfectly with the patches.
I'm today's first speaker. My name is Veronica. Ashley's already given me plenty of introduction, but essentially, I consider myself a scientist even before a practitioner. I've worked with light now for about 15 years, first with clams and mussels and fish, and then kind of took the power and tool of light into human health practice. And then from there, more recently in consulting roles for devices. So if you're familiar with red light therapy, infrared, EMS, electroporation, all those devices, I do consult with companies to kind of fine tune their engineering. So some would say that I'm maybe an expert in this field, although, in my opinion, only one entity kind of qualifies for expert status. That'd be God. But maybe I'll try and be his best messenger today. So, when we talk about LifeWave, I really want to kind of give you an evidence base, grounding as to what distinguishes this and what really sets it apart. So, the first thing I want to really kind of point out is that LifeWave, as Ashley mentioned, is not transdermal. So this is not a chemical or supplement grade type of effect that you're getting when it comes to LifeWave. This is not putting anything in the body that's going to go through and get absorbed by the bloodstream. So when you see these different patches, glutathione, carnosine, the Alavita patch, which stimulates the epithalamin, this is working to actually stimulate your body with its own infrastructure to make these things themselves, okay? That is a very big point that we want to stress. How does it do this? Like, how does it actually do this, right? People tell you, oh, the light is going to be redirected in the body, but you're kind of still left with asking questions, how? I have a little diagram here that might help kind of elucidate this. So essentially these patches, if you were to open up and look at them, they have what are like these little lattice-like networks. It's some geometry that's there. These are made out of amino acids that essentially form into these crystalline structures. And this goes on top of the skin. And then what happens is that the natural infrared, or what we kind of, don't really see as a visible light, but kind of more feel as heat, this is going to be something that as this hits this, geometrical array, it is going to be filtered through this and changed. It's shaping the way that this light then travels in the body. And that matters because different wavelengths of light or, different frequencies of light are going to have different effects on the body. Many of you, again, if you've used any red light therapy, infrared therapy from exogenous devices or tools like the kind that I'm helping to design now, you'll know that they advertise certain wavelengths, 635 nanometers, 850 nanometers. And these are advertised because they are denoted in research as having specific effects to be able to reach certain tissues, stimulate certain processes, right? The thing is that this is even better than working with these devices because this is actually using your body's own infrared to be able to send this signal. This is a language by which it's already familiar with. So in this diagram, you'll see that we have, again, those lattice array or those kind of geometrical crystalline structures. And you can kind of see how that by virtue of when we bring light or the energy of light into the mix, this has direct, frequency equivalence. And so when we have a certain crystalline structure, certain geometry, that equals a certain light wave outcome. How does that exactly translate to the patch? I really look at LifeWave as almost being like a hologram. Okay. And many people, when you think of hologram, you think of 3D. 3D is just the effect of that. How we actually get there is a 2D flat surface. That's where that you could make the analogy that that 2D hologram where we have that information that is going to be backlit with the laser to then create the illumination effect that we experience as the hologram. This is your patch. This is your LifeWave patch, that 2D flat crystalline surface. Your light here is not an exogenous laser. It is the infrared light from your body. You've ever seen those thermography or the night vision goggles and you see, the light that is made visible through this technology. We wouldn't normally see it that way with our own eye, but that is an energy, right? And that exists within the human body. And so from that, depending on what kind of crystalline array that we are getting, these different patches have different designs. we are able to create different frequency outcomes that travel through the body in 3D, and they will stimulate various cellular activities. So how do we know that this really happens? How do we know that a certain crystalline structure is actually going to produce a certain frequency outcome? LifeWave actually is going to test for that. They're not just saying to take their word for it. They will actually utilize technology to make sure that these crystalline arrays are producing this light wave, okay? You can kind of think of the flat surface, this LifeWave patch, as the coded information in a 2D format, again, that is going to serve as the precursor to create that effect in 3D in the body. And they're in fact able to measure that stabilized geometry produces this specific frequency, okay? That's still only half of the battle. I'll get to the other half here in just a moment. But they can verify that in fact we do have those frequencies that are produced from these particular arrays. Another thing that I found that really distinguished LifeWave, coming from a science background myself, is that the inventor or the founder is a scientist. And, you know, working both as a scientist and then going into more clinical practice later, I saw that as a clinician, you can identify a lot of needs in the public. You're the first to start seeing what's going on in the trenches, you know, what kind of symptoms are coming out. But that doesn't necessarily mean that because you're able to see that you can engineer something that fixes that problem. Being able to say, hey, this is what we need, and being able to make that so that it actually does in the body what we need it to do, that's, you know, a different talent. That's going to be somebody who engineer, inventor, scientist, etc. And we get that with Dave. So I was very impressed by his past history of the Department of Defense and, you know, having that typical conventional kind of background, if you will. So really we get respect in both circles, right? LifeWave is a technology that it's not going to be something that, you know, if you have these more conventional backgrounds that you have to be afraid to discuss this because it's too woo. It's exactly the opposite of that. And I really enjoy that about having this from a science or scientist-based founder. Now, with that said, there is, you know, what we can measure from the patch, right? We know that this produces those specific frequencies based on those unique crystalline geometrical arrays, but does that have any effect in the body? So what if we know that when we measure this, that it produces a certain frequency? Does that frequency go and talk to the tissues in the body that it's supposed to talk to create this effect, right? And we see that. LifeWave is also partnering to do independent research, and we're able to see that these frequencies that are supposed to stimulate said tissues, cells, receptors, etc., and increase an endogenous production of whatever it may be, glutathione, epithalamin, carnosine, etc., is doing that, okay? We're able to see that we can go through and actually measure a physical outcome and see that we raise copper peptide levels, okay? So this is something that is energy based, right? We're working with your own light to be able to stimulate physical changes in the body. Just because that this is not physical doesn't mean it can't have physical effects. I remind you of the periodic table of elements, all those numbers and everything that are on there. This is your energy potential, okay? It's what tells the chemistry how to do chemistry. So if you really want to get to the root, the deepest root is to work in the energy realm, to work with light, right? Light, in particular, in this case, is something that we're not even having to supply to the body. We're actually using what the body has. So there is also, you know, the full spectrum research here to show that this does translate to having these effects in the human body. So who is LifeWave ideal for? First of all, I think it's important to understand that LifeWave is not, you know, going in there and overriding what the body does. Much in the world of supplements, even if they are very much needed, they're going in there and they stand to potentially maybe in short term create something that looks like it's fixing the situation, but can be followed by what I call a secondary imbalance. That's because nature doesn't work with these exaggerated isolate doses, okay? And in order for us to be able to take high isolate doses of something, we actually have to already be a very good canvas to be able to run. If we're giving high extracts of supplements and the body isn't in a condition to do a high performance, you're going to crash, okay? And I've seen that all too frequently. I appreciate what LifeWave does by going in and really prioritizing correctness over quantity. You don't need a higher dose of something, you need the correct dose. How do we know what the correct dose is? Because dosing is the biggest nemesis to any physician and or clinician. It's the hardest thing to get right, especially in pediatrics. This is something that takes dosing out of the equation because your body's doing the dosing. Your body will always know what is the proper dose for you, how much that your cell's optimization point is set to. If we're stimulating that, we're always in the balance zone, right? We're not overdoing it, we're not underdoing it. One example that I want to give before I wrap this up to send it on to the next speaker is think of something like, melatonin. First of all, there's a lot of corruption and not a lot of standardization in a lot of the melatonin products that are over the counter these days, but the pineal gland varies up to 20-fold within individuals. And how much melatonin that you need that's right for your body is based around that surface volume of the pineal gland. If I am the same weight, height, etc., everything is you, my pineal gland has a different surface volume. The amount of melatonin I need versus somebody else is different, okay? You might be that person that reacts bad to the supplement and says, well, this supplement isn't for me. Is it not for you, or is it because of the fact that it was too much for you? So using something like the Silent Nights in that case, is going to help to allow you to create and boost and optimize what your body has already established as that balance point for you. Today, we're mostly focusing on the X39. Many people kind of consider that the gateway, right, to being able to get things standardized in the foundation. That's because what this is doing is it's really talking to the tissues, and that tissue is that canvas of the body that has to do this work for you. So it would make sense that by being able to kind of get this rhythm to be correct, that everything else becomes viable. If you want to take supplements, sometimes they can be strategic and they can help. But you can't put supplements in, you can't put hardware into a system where that the system is really a software issue. So that's what really we do with LifeWave is we go in there and we're software engineers and we update that software, we reboot it. Individuals that are sensitive, that react, that have had chronic illness, and they can't really take much of anything. This is the product for them. This is something that I saw clinically that when I have somebody that can't tolerate anything, I've dealt with people that couldn't have water, okay? They had to have distilled water. They ended up in the hospital. LifeWave is something that was an option for me whenever I was in a corner thinking, what can I give this person? And what's more is it helped these people to show improvement. Okay, so it wasn't just tolerated, it was actually able to help restore this rhythm that we speak of. People who are on limited budgets. How many of you have, if you're a practitioner, those clients or patients that say, I can only do one thing. Okay, so how can I get results with just the one thing? If you're going to pick the one thing, this is it. Okay, I've never had to have anybody be convinced of LifeWave once that they experience the patches for themselves. They are then asking me about what patch might be beneficial for them next. And lastly, those of you who might have already a lot of, supplements or medications and things that you are managing, if that's already a nightmare trying to think about what is a contraindication, well, if I add this, will it be okay to take with this? None of that is a concern when you're dealing with LifeWave. This is not working in the realm of chemistry. It is working in the realm of what creates the chemistry. And let me tell you, I have had individuals who have run out of supplements for whatever reason, didn't refill. Maybe they were, trying to cut expenses, and they ran out of the supplements expecting that they're going to actually experience a regression in their health, only to see that because they just prioritize, okay, let me do the patch, it's easy, I'll take a break from all the supplement madness, and then see that their health actually improved exponentially from that. So I could go on and on, but there's, many different points of view, many different speakers from many different fields who will continue that conversation. But, this really is the most clinically powerful tool that I've ever come across. And it's the perfect marriage of, science and evidence-based while still being something that is translating to what real people can do. You put a patch on and you go on with your day.